Anyways,
I'm sorry.
Allison, get your head out of the gutter.
It's not my fault. Xaden Ryerson makes me a feral animal, okay? It's
True.
Xaden Ryerson. He has this effect on me. I'm sorry, he does.
Everyone, welcome back to the Book Don't Fantasy podcast. We, Addison and Lorraine, are two best friends who explore the world of fantasy through books, shows, and movies, but with a heavy emphasis on books. And we have very exciting news for everyone today. This is a bonus episode because last night, which was November 10th, a very exciting excerpt from the soon-to-be released Onyx Storm was dropped in Cosmopolitan Magazine's Winter 2024 edition. We originally saw it on Reddit first, but it has since been deleted. And as of now, you can access the magazine and article, which is titled Hotter Than Dragonfire, through Kindle Unlimited if you have that, or the Libby app. Alternatively, we are linking a PDF version of the excerpt in the episode description of today's show. So if you do not have access to Kindle Unlimited or Libby, don't worry, we got you.
We do. Or we also made a reel on TikTok and Instagram where I talk for a second and then I disappear off screen so you can screenshot and zoom in and read on your phone. But the font is very tiny.
Without further ado, let's get into it. So we do have a couple housekeeping updates to do first, though. So take it away, Addison.
Yes. Okay. So for those of you guys who have been listening for a little while, you know that we have been discussing our plans for if and how we will cover Onyx Storm, which is the third book in the Empyrean series. We were going to wait to announce our plans, but with the release of the excerpt, we are happy to officially announce we will be covering Onyx Storm in the same deep dive, spoiler-free format when it does come out in January. Our plan is to wrap up Queen of Shadows right before the release date and switch over to Onyx Storm. But, super important note, we are definitely not done with TOG. As soon as we finish Onyx Storm, we will jump back into the TOG universe with Empire of Storms. Ultimately, it was a really difficult decision because we love both worlds so much and we don't love the idea of stopping in the middle of a series, but we really, really want to cover all the Empyrean content in the future because we know there's going to be 2 more books after Onyx Storm. And if we were to wait until we finish TOG, we would basically be waiting until next year. And by next year, I mean like 2026. Kingdom of Ash by itself is 1,000 pages, okay? 1,000 pages. And we still have Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, and Kingdom of Ash. So we still have 3 more books after that. So we would literally be waiting so long. And we really value being able to do our deep dive spoiler-free. And there's no way I was going to be parted from Xaden Ryerson a moment longer than necessary. And it basically would have been impossible for us to avoid spoilers until we finished TOG. So that's ultimately how we came to that decision. But we want to assure you we're not done with TOG because, I mean, me, myself, personally, I can't be done. I'm in.
I'm invested and I'm fully invested. But yeah, in order to do it spoiler-free, we would have to cover it pretty much immediately. So we intend to read and record episodes for sections in real time. So we'll just release those as soon as we read. We'll record and then post that and then continue reading and just do it in sections like that. And so hopefully this way it will quite literally be a live book club podcast and you'll have somebody to discuss it with as you are reading it as well, which should be really fun. If you're wondering why we aren't covering Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, it's because we've already read those books. And so we wouldn't be able to make our coverage spoiler free for people. We really like the format of being a spoiler free podcast because that way it appeals to both people that have already read it and those who have not. So we're not alienating anybody by making a situation where you'd have to have read the entirety of both of those books before you could start listening to the podcast was already behind it. But we do plan to release Iron Flame recap episodes. We're going to do 2 episodes just to summarize and go over important things to remember from Iron Flame specifically, because that is most relevant moving into Onyx Storm. We didn't feel like there was really anything from Fourth Wing that wasn't answered in Iron Flame. So that's why we're focusing on Iron Flame first.
Or if it was such a broad question that it's going to continue throughout the series. And ultimately, Fourth Wing has been out for like a year and a half. And so I feel like so many people have covered it and deep dived it.
Yes.
Deep dove it. I don't know. I don't know what the right thing to say is, but we didn't feel that would be the best use of our limited time leading up to Onyx Storm. But of course, Iron Flame is the preceding events greatly impact Onyx Storm. Throughout our coverage, we will reference Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, but we just didn't feel like it would be necessarily beneficial for you guys or for us time-wise to do any like recap of Fourth Wing.
And then, of course, finally, if you are enjoying the show, then the very best way for you to support us is to rate our podcast. Leave a review and share it with a friend. If you have not done so yet, then go ahead and do it now. Also, we would love some feedback about this episode because it is different from TOG. Obviously, we're departing, we're entering a new series, we're covering content in a little bit of a different way. So yeah, if you guys enjoy how we cover this little excerpt, consider it like a little taste, I guess, of what we'll do for Onyx Storm.
Or a very large taste, because as always, I'm like, it won't take us that long. It'll just be like a few little notes here and there. 15 pages later, here we are.
We do indeed go very deep on not.
That's what she said.
Yeah. We take something and we make it into something a lot bigger. So,
that's what she said.
Okay, anyways.
I'm sorry.
Allison, get your head out of the gutter.
It's not my fault. Xaden Ryerson makes me a feral animal, okay?
True.
Xaden Ryerson. He has this effect on me. I'm sorry, he does.
Okay, anyways. So that ends our housekeeping updates. To give a quick spoiler warning, this is the first piece of content that we have covered related to the Empyrean series. But to be clear, Addison and I, again, have both read Fourth Wing and Iron Flame already. Given that this is an excerpt from the highly anticipated third book, there will be spoilers from Iron Flame and Fourth Wing as we discuss it today.
Yes, to be clear, to be so crystal clear, if you have not read Fourth Wing or Iron Flame, stop here, finish the books, and then come back. I cannot stress that enough. I just don't want anyone to get confused because usually we're spoiler free, but this is kind of a little different situation. So there will be spoilers. I mean, we can't talk about the excerpt if we hadn't read the book. So seems intuitive, but just in case.
And with that being said, let's get into our analysis.
Yay. Okay, so in our actual Onyx Storm coverage, we will do book reports, chapter summaries, but obviously this is a little bit different. We're just going to do a brief recap of where we ended in Iron Flame, and there's really relevant information necessary to analyze this excerpt. So at the end of Iron Flame, Violet and her squad were all regrouping after the first wave of attack from the Venom and Wyverns. The second wave was preparing, but we're waiting for their general to arrive. Before the second wave of attack starts, a lot of shit happens. But here are the most important things. Number 1, Violet figures out that Indarna is a special 7th breed of dragon, and that the reason the Wardstones didn't last in Erasia was not because of her translation, but because she didn't know about the 7th kind of dragon. Secondly, during the first wave of attack, Brennan mended the Wardstone, and Lilith, Violet's mom, uses Sloane's siphoning signet to imbue the Wardstone fully, but she loses her life in the process. R.I.P. Lilith. We both did reread the end of Iron Flame in anticipation of this, and it still made me cry.
Oh.
Just a little tear, you know. Oh my gosh. Okay, I can't do it. Violet then organizes all the dragons, including Indarna, to breathe fire on it, officially reactivating Besgaia's wards. And to our knowledge, these are like the real deal, long-lasting, for real wards, unlike the ones in Erasia. While all this was going down, Xaden was getting his ass whooped badly by the big bad General Venom. And because of his love for Violet and his need to keep her safe and alive, he draws power from the source and he turns Venom. I forgot how still emotionally devastating that is to read.
No, that was like soul crushing to learn that because we're like,
I know.
Oh.
I know. Once the wards were reactivated, all the Wyverns drop dead and the Venom flee, essentially ending the battle, meaning our Besgaiath group clenched victory. Or so we thought. Also, it's important to know that Violet's squad remained intact. Everyone was alive and well except for Sawyer, who lost his leg to the wyvern, but was saved by the healers after receiving surgery. It is also heavily implied, if not explicitly stated, that basically everyone will leave Aracia and head back to Besgaeth under the protection of the wards. That's like all the main kind of big takeaways from the end of Iron Flame that are relevant to what's happening in this excerpt. And then very quickly, so I feel like a big question that is happening with the excerpt is how does this fall chronologically following the events of Iron Flame? So I did some real like red string pictures everywhere. I'm like, okay, I can do this. Like I almost like tried to break it down hour by hour, you know? So before we get into the actual excerpt, I feel like we need to establish a timeline for where this falls. And so here's what I think the timeline is. But first, allow me to set the scene for you. At the end of Iron Flame, the wards go up, the Venin flee, everyone is cheering in the halls. Violet makes her way to Xaden. She tells Taryn and Darna they need to have a little chit chat. And then she sees Xaden and realizes he's a Venin. Okay. End of the book from Violet's perspective. We then jump to Xaden's perspective. He and Violet were sleeping. We can assume this is that night after the battle. There's also a comment about how they waited hours while Sawyer was in surgery. So to me, that means this. Violet and Xaden had their conversation at the end of Iron Flame. They probably do some procedural stuff like help with the wounded, get everyone organized and settled. They wait for Sawyer to be out of surgery to make sure he's going to live. And I feel this is basically canon because Violet would never go to sleep without knowing one of her squad mates was going to be okay. She just wouldn't. Okay. Her and Xaden go to bed, probably late. Xaden wakes up in the middle of the night or very early in the morning. I'm leaning towards early in the morning, leaving a still sleeping Violet, and he goes to talk to Jack. And that's what we get in Iron Flame. After that, where and what Xaden does is unknown, but Violet remarks two things in the excerpt when he re-enters. One, he's with Garrick, and two, he had wet spots from fallen snowflakes on his heavy winter flight jacket, so he had likely been outside. This all leads me to believe that this excerpt is taking place the next day, mid-morning or early afternoon. Important to note here, it would be highly unlikely that more than a few hours would have passed without someone detecting the Venin in Besgaeth. And so the big giveaway is Sawyer's surgery timeline and his healing, because it's obvious he's probably just come out of surgery. He's probably just waking up and like groggy, but okay. And then there's no way the Venin were chilling in Besgaeth for weeks, you know? So to me, that kind of sums it up that this is like literally like back to back to back is how it plays out in my mind.
Yes, I agree. Beautiful timeline.
Woo!
No jokes.
Retweet. All right. So now to the fun part, the excerpt.
So this excerpt picks up with the realization that Venin had indeed infiltrated Besgaeth. If we had to guess, this was likely happening during the battle with the Venin while everyone was distracted and occupied with fighting the hordes off. Now, in the excerpt, Violet first thinks Venin, and then Rhiannon makes a comment stating Merrin protects Sawyer as they all run past the infirmary beds. This aligns with a timeline of being post-Venin battle because Sawyer had lost his leg to a wyvern and had undergone surgery, as confirmed by Xaden on page 622 of chapter 66.
Yep, which just echoes and confirms our speculation about the timeline. So also, this is totally a random small note. When they're leaving the infirmary, Violet shouts at Winifred to lock the doors, and I knew that name sounded familiar, but I just could not remember who she was. She is a healer, and most notably, she is Nolan, the Mender's wife. We get that very brief scene with her in the very beginning of Fourth Wing when Imogen dislocates Violet's shoulder on assessment day. And so just wanted to note it here because I feel like she's not in any of the books other than that first scene. So I was like, wait, who's Winifred? And then I was like, oh, yeah. And that makes sense that she would be in the infirmary. So I just wanted to just drop that because this is a refresher. At least for me, this is a refresher. Even though I've read the book so many times, it's just, you know, enough time passes, you kind of forget things. So it's also important to note as they make their way down the hall, they notice all the blankets on the overflow beds in the hallway have been thrown back and all the patients that were in those beds have been desiccated by the Venin, RIP. I wanted to note this because we really need to develop a working knowledge of what Venin are capable of within the wards. Because previously we thought that they were basically powerless within them, almost like they couldn't even exist within the wards. Obviously, that has now been proven false by Jack Barlow and everything that's gone on with him. We're not going to get into that here, but I do want to create a working knowledge with evidence of like, what can Venin do even within real working wards? And so they can still desiccate people pretty efficiently, it seems like.
So after the discovery that there's venom in the building, this is confirmed by comments that Jack Barlow has made. He states that he had placed tracking lures around the college and up the path to the Vale for the venom to follow. Dane, at the time when they first caught Jack, checked his memories to find as many of the locations as he could, but they ultimately had not found all of them. And only the infantry soldiers and some of the Griffin flyers had been helping to find all of the lures. This is information that we got in the final parts of Iron Flame. I only provide that information because it confirms how venom actually ended up in the college in the first place.
Or it
and Jack had been alluding
anyway.
to it. Yes. Yeah. And it seems to indicate that Jack had been alluding to it before the venom battle even started at the end of Iron Flame. The other thing I wanted to touch on is the fact that Violet tries to reach out to Xaden through their bond, but feels nothing from him. This is from the excerpt. She thinks, I reach for Xaden and find his shields not only up, but impenetrable. Frustrating, but fine. Which just leads to the question of like, what was Xaden doing? So,
well, so when I first read that, initially I thought maybe the timeline was Xaden was talking to Jack and he had his shields up and that's why Violet couldn't reach him. And I was like, oh, that would make sense. But then he would have been in the room with Jack when the venom attack happened and Violet showed up. So that kind of discredits that theory. So I'm not super concerned he was doing anything sketchy or anything. Just, I don't know. I'm not that worried about it.
For now, I guess. Yeah.
For now, yeah.
We'll see. So after that, Violet, Rhiannon, and Riddick make their way into the halls outside of the infirmary when they encounter a supposed scribe running straight toward them. The line in the excerpt says, the scribe's hood falls back, revealing red-rimmed eyes with spiderweb veins at his temples. Nope, definitely not a cadet. And then Violet flicks a dagger, which lodges in the left side of his chest, taking the venom down. I did think it was really funny when Riddick asked, how did you know? Dude, like, really had rimmed eyes. But Violet comments to him that a scribe would have run toward the archives because Violet, our clever Violet.
That was really funny too. It's like, boy, look at his eyes. You see those red veins? Like, it's quite literally written on their face. But I did think the same thing. And I think the way it's written, there's a weird perception gap. I think Violet throws it a heartbeat after Rhea asks the scribe which way did they go because she's already intuited it's a venom. And so it's kind of one of those like Violet is processing as it's all happening and she's already throwing as he throws back the hood. And so I think that's why Riddick was like, how'd you know? Even though, because he just realized, I mean, we're talking about like literal heartbeat moments. He's realizing like moments after Violet throws a dagger. That's kind of what it was. So. Also, just something interesting, I noticed that the venom that Violet kills dies immediately. His body is described as, his body shrivels in the span of a heartbeat, and then when Riddick moves it aside, it's described as a husk of a body. This is described extremely similar to what happens to people when the venom drained them. So I just thought it was interesting that that happens to them as well. I don't know why it just stuck out to me a little bit because there's no blood draining from them or anything.
It's like the alloy though, right? Like they made those daggers because something about the alloy.
But it's like
counters whatever's going on with the venom.
But it's like the venom are physiologically not humans anymore. There's no blood or anything. They just shrivel up and desiccate. Similar to what they do to their victims. So I just thought that was kind of interesting because it's possible. Now, remember, it's been a little bit since I've read Fourth Wing, but I don't think there's really a description. We know they have killed venom, but what happens to their bodies and how it looks. So I just thought it was weird, like they didn't bleed or anything like that. They just desiccate like their victims. So that was interesting. Also, something I had not considered, and I am surprised did not come up in Iron Flame during the big battle at the end, is that after Violet kills the venom with the dagger, she picks it back up and she thinks, the alloy's hum of power is a little dimmer, but still there, hopefully capable of another killing blow. And this feels super, super important to me that not only are these alloy-infused daggers the only thing that can kill venom besides Violet's lightning, at least that we know of, but they lose power with each kill. This really seems like a logistical problem in battles when there are a lot of venom. Most of the fights with venoms have been like 2 or 3. or one, like in Cordon at Viscount Acaris's house. And there's been multiple riders with lots of daggers. So I don't think they've run into this problem. But if they go to a big battle with lots of venom, their daggers could quite literally lose their charge, so to speak. And so I don't know how that did not become a problem during the battle in Iron Flame because they were battling so many venom. And I feel like that's something that's going to need to get addressed. I thought that was kind of interesting because that's never been described like that. I mean, to be honest, until this moment, my impression was once the alloy is infused, I mean, it hypothetically lasts forever, but I guess it makes sense that it's infused with power, so the power can also be used up, so to speak. So I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's a good note because I hadn't really thought about that until you pointed that out. So that does raise some questions. So right after this thought, she realizes that this is how venom fed without notice. They're dressed as scribes. And this is where we're going to get into all of our evidence of like how this was foreshadowed previously.
The who, what, when, where, why, and how. Okay. And I just have to freaking say before Lorraine drops this knowledge on all of us that she is just like Violet, a brilliant fucking woman for figuring this out because she sent it to me and I was like, what? And so this is an incredible catch. So just buckle up, everybody.
Thank you. So I had gone, I think, all the way back to chapter 59, actually, to read just the whole ending section and refresh my memory of what happened. And so in chapter 60 on page 565, Jack made a comment once he was captured after he killed Bade and broke Basquiat's word stones to say two things. The first thing was, we might not be at full strength, capable of wielding greater magic under your protections, but make no mistake, we are already among you, and now we're free.
If that did not send me screaming when I got your text that said that, I was like, we are already among you?
Oh, I know. Scary. So that line tells us the venom have been running amongst them for who knows how long, but they are already in Basquiat. Okay, they've already infiltrated by this point. No one picked up on it. And then the second thing he says is they don't need a map, not when I showed them the way. While you were busy smuggling weapons out, we were busy smuggling them in.
Oh my God. How did we miss this? How did we miss this? Well, let me just say, in all of our defenses, I think when we read this, we were busy smuggling them in. We're thinking like over the battle, right? The battle that is happening. That's what he means. But it seems pretty clear to me that he means like we were literally smuggling them into Basquiat.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he literally told us.
And that tells us it's been happening over a long period of time because we know that Xaden has been going on missions with some of the other marked ones, like from Fourth Wing. Okay, so this has been going over a long period of time. And so when he says you were smuggling weapons out, we were putting them in. So like, timeline wise, it means it's been happening over quite a long period of time,
See, I really did not. I mean, I like it for the story purposes, but I remember not liking that Jack Barlow was a venom and could be a venom within the wards because now it's created this hysteria of like, everyone's a venom, who's who's not, trust no one. And I find that very stressful. I find it very stressful.
It really is. Yeah. And so we also know that Jack Barlow had placed tracking lures around the college and up the path to the Vale for the venom to follow, as was discussed on page 567. So Dane had checked Jack's memories at this time to find and look for as many locations as he could, but not all of them were ultimately found, which means if venom had made it in, they could still use the lures to navigate Basquiat and the Vale from within. Now, the main connection to make from this is that everyone believed this was strictly about the tracking lures Jack had been leaving around, but now we know he was actually alluding to the fact that venom were the weapons that had been smuggled in and infiltrated under the disguise of being scribes, supposedly. So
internal and external screaming, both.
Crazy, very crazy, not great. We do not like this. So next, they head down the stairs toward the chamber where Jack Barlow is being held. And this also aligns with where chapter 66 of Iron Flame ends when Xaden goes to visit Jack in his cell to ask about a cure. So another piece of evidence to support our working timeline. Once they get down there, they hear that there are other Venin already there, and they realize that the Venin are trying to bust Jack Barlow out of jail, essentially. Violet, Rhiannon, and Riddick enter into the brig where they see two dark wielders in scribe clothes, and a third female is drawing a dragger across the neck of a second lieutenant that they'd pinned to a table, and a fourth that stands at the edge of the shadows. Now, it's described that there is a female that has a long silver braid and the classic red-rimmed Venin eyes, and she also has a faded tattoo on her forehead. Which this is super crazy because we know that the silver ends of Violet's hair have been a huge topic of conversation. And so we're just like, what does this mean about this Venin? What does this mean about Violet? It just raises a lot of questions. And then even more crazy is that with the smirk, this said female then disappears. Okay, she like apparates and like teleports out of there. And we don't know where she goes, what she was doing, how she did it. Okay. But obviously I was like, what the fuck?
Those are my thoughts exactly. I was like, what? I had to go back and read that part like 4 times. I'm like, wait. She disappeared? Like, poof. Apparently so.
So my main thought with this discovery that is so crazy about this Venin disappearing is that she must be a really powerful Venin within the hierarchy if she can just teleport like that, basically. Because I don't think we've seen any other Venin do something like that yet. She is the first one of those.
Shit. As you're saying it, one of the Venin at Resin disappear, the one with the staff, like apparates out of there. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, but okay, but if that's the case, did he use the staff? Is that what allowed him?
We don't know enough about Venin, but damn it, as you're saying.
Okay, but we do know that one was one of the leader ones, right? Like that one was
a sage, I think.
And yeah. Okay, so in either case, maybe the silver-haired one is rank-wise at least a sage, potentially more.
If they had that kind of power. Or you could also go in the other direction. Violet is imagining this. This is a premonition. There are a lot of directions you can go with this. I had a crazy theory that I now feel like is a little discredited. I just discredited myself in this episode by remembering what happened at Resin. But I will just tell you what my crazy theory is, okay? Just for fun. So there is a lot of speculation about Violet's second signet. And one of those is time travel or time manipulation. There are a lot of variations of that. A lot of directions you could go. Remember in Iron Flame, in Violet's Venin Nightmares, the Venin tells her she will turn Venin for love. So I was wondering, because the Venin has silver hair, what if the Venin is actually Violet from the future or something like that? Or the past, present, I don't know. I know it's wild and out there. Obviously, I'm going off of, 3 pages of text here, but it does make me wonder. But now that we've kind of refreshed that the Venins, some of them may be able to just poof in and out of existence, then I don't know. Dang it.
When you did say that, I was like, that is crazy, but I really like it. And I thought
I know you would
cool
like it.
For a second it's like was related to time. And that is one of my top contending signet theories for Violet, honestly, is that it has something to do with time potentially, mostly because of Andarna. But we also know that Andarna's gift with time was something that was specific to her being a featherling still. And that after she got older, that was going to disappear, right? That wasn't going to remain as a power that Violet could have. And we know that the signets that writers develop is a mix between characteristics of the writer and the power of the dragon that they channel from. So
also, I feel like we have to at least note the mention of the tattoo on the forehead of this disappearing Venin. Unfortunately, I have absolutely no speculation on what or why. I did search tattoo in the ebook. Lots of the writers have tattoos because they're badass. But to my knowledge, there has been no mention of symbolically important tattoos that have any kind of signifying information about that person, and definitely not related to Venin. But just going to note it here.
Right. I think it's important too, especially because I feel like anytime a character notes something like a characteristic of somebody else, it seems important. And Violet specifically notes that this Venin had silver hair and that it had this tattoo on its forehead. So that's
And
pretty
something
distinct.
I was just going to say something so distinct too, such a distinct marking on such a prominent place of the body.
Right. We don't know what it means, but seems like it may be important. So we're going to note it just in case. Of course, as everybody's in the cell, a fight ensues, and during it, one of the Venin with the sword shouts, "Not the silver hair. We need her." The question being, we need her for what? And the Venin obviously is referring to Violet. And despite what Violet thinks right after this, she thinks to control Zayden, fuck that. I'll never be used against him again. To me, it's pretty obvious that the Venin are after Violet, just based off of everything that we've read and her encounters throughout Iron Flame and everything. But there is a debate about whether the Venin want.
We can call him Vaden now because he's a Venin Zayden.
He's not bad.
Vaden. Well, there's
Oh
a
my
joke
God,
we're
okay.
going to beat to death for the next 3 months after Onyx Storm comes out.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, but there is a debate about whether the Venin want Zayden in order to bait Violet, or if it's the other way around and they're just taking Violet because they're trying to bait Zayden. I don't know. It also could be both.
I'm going to take a deep breath here because I have a wall of text to get through. I have a lot of thoughts about this. Okay, so there's a lot of speculation around who the Venin really want, Violet or Zayden, or possibly both. There are a lot of moments throughout Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, mostly Iron Flame, that point to either one of them. But here are the most recent and relevant from the end of Iron Flame. Reasons, and we're kind of thinking, do they want Violet? On page 593 of Iron Flame, when Violet and Kat are facing off with the red-haired Venin, she says, "Oh, you are the powerful one, aren't you?" Implying all the Venin know about Violet and her power, and she even calls her the lightning wielder. She also says, her, meaning Kat, "I don't care about, but you, I'm under orders not to kill, so let's not make this difficult." She then also goes on to say, "You'll be so much fun for him to wield." And then she also goes on to say how she'll be the favorite for delivering Violet and she'll be given the veil as a reward. And all of this really strongly implies to me that they really want Violet specifically because she is a lightning wielder. And there's a lot of other evidence to support this, but I just wanted to pull out what was most relevant from the end of Iron Flame. Now, for Zayden, there's a good argument and case to be made for him. Here is where things get kind of interesting. In Iron Flame, when they're all waiting for the second wave of Wyvern to attack, Zayden and Violet have a conversation. Zayden says that the Wyvern won't attack because they're waiting. Melgren says, "What the fuck for?" And Zayden says, "Me." Violet is obviously like, what the fuck do you mean by that? Zayden tells Violet, he thought we'd be at Samara, figured we'd do the honorable thing and answer Melgren's call, he being the big bad General Venin. Violet says, "How do you know that?" And Zayden says, "Do us both a favor and don't ask." I'm not going to go totally down the rabbit hole of like, we need to dissect this conversation. We'll do that in our Iron Flame recap. But there is something that will definitely get explored in Onyx Storm. But its relevance to who the Venin want is this. This implies that they need Zayden for something. My guess is that they want to use him to get to Violet. If it was really Zayden that they wanted, why wouldn't they have just taken him and flew off? Because when we get Zayden's POV, the general had him wrapped tight in these magical bonds. He could have just like levitated him and said, "Let's go." So why would he not have taken him off? So it's time for another crazy theory. Okay, and this one I feel pretty good about. I think this entire situation, Samara, Bezgaeth, Jack, and everything, is a setup to force Zayden into turning Venin so they could use him to lay a trap for Violet. In Violet's dream sequence, when the Venin's like, "You'll turn for love," it would be much more likely for her to do it if Zayden is a Venin. And I think that the Venin are playing the long game here. Okay, think about it. They've been waiting for centuries. What's a few more weeks, months, right? That is not to say that they weren't hoping they'd get to win the battle and take over Bezgaeth. Like, if that would have happened, great. They don't need Violet. But I think their ultimate purpose was to get to Zayden to use him as leverage for Violet, is what I think. I think there was an ulterior motive for all of this.
I agree too, there's really just too many snippets of conversation, even in just the last section of Iron Flame, and not counting all the other encounters that they've had with Venin, that imply that the Venin really want Violet for something. Her power really intrigues them. I totally agree that using Xaden is kind of a perfect ploy. And if they get Xaden, great anyway, because
He's so
he
powerful.
is also very powerful. So
Exactly. And so this is kind of what Lorraine touched on from the excerpt. Violet thinks here they won't use me to console Xaden, never again. But I think Violet just doesn't realize her own worth. This seems possible given all the times Violet doubts people when they tell her that she's the most powerful rider of their generation. And she always thinks it's Xaden, but we all know it's her, right? She's powerful, not just like her actual physical lightning power, but her mind, her unfailing loyalty, all of those things, right? And so it would not shock me that Violet doesn't recognize her own self-worth enough to realize that she's the true prize. And that they're much more likely to use Rhiannon, Riddick, Sawyer, Xaden to manipulate Violet to get what they want than the other way around.
Yes. And before we continue on with the excerpt, there are a couple other lines and moments that I think help support or imply that Violet is really the big prize that the Venin want. So back on page 565 of Iron Flame, there was a line and it says, Jack Barlow gestures at Bade, his glare alternating between Xaden and me. I'll never know why it's you he wants. What the fuck makes you so special? And I am particularly honing in on the fact that Jack doesn't specify who he is talking about. This can also be combined with the comments just before this about making his choice to turn Venin as soon as he saw THAN bond with Violet. And we know that Jack has always been pissed about Violet because he presumes her to be the weakest link and spent pretty much all of Fourth Wing trying to kill her. And the fact that she bonded THAN, who is perceived to be the most powerful dragon, second to Coda, really makes me believe that he was referring to Violet when he made that comment.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like with all the other evidence, that makes sense. Yeah, I would agree.
And then also in Xaden's POV chapter in chapter 66, the General Venin in Xaden's nightmare had said, you know what will happen when you fail. I'll step over your dead body and find her, and then I'll wrap my hands around her delicate little neck and drain her. And that line is what had prompted Xaden to make that decision to ultimately turn Venin. It's because he could not stand the idea of the Venin getting to Violet. So he ultimately does this to protect her.
See, to me, that line makes me think too, if they really wanted Xaden alive to use him, he wouldn't say, I'll kill you and take her. Right. So again, that also really implies they really want Violet for a specific purpose.
Yes. My last spiel about Violet's significance to the Venin. There was another scene back in chapter 42 when they make a trip to Corden in Iron Flame and they visit with Viscount Takaris, and the Venin that had been trapped in the box and surprises everybody. He pops out of there and says, it's you, the one who commands the sky. Oh, how I'll be rewarded when I return with you.
Oh, yeah.
So literally throughout all of Entire Flame, there have just been so many encounters that really, to me, suggest that the Venin obviously want Violet above anybody else.
Well, I feel confident saying we've resolved this debate right here, right now. I no longer believe they want Xaden for him, maybe to use him as leverage against Violet. But I feel like, again, this kind of feeds back into this theory of they want Violet so bad, they'll do anything, including stage an attack on Vesgaiath to get to her. And so, yeah, okay, check. We have solved the riddle for you guys. No need to continue any further thinking. I feel pretty set on this.
I think so too. And so to conclude this excerpt, Luckily, right at the perfect moment, per usual, Shadow Daddy Zayden Ryerson comes to the rescue.
Oh my
We love
gosh. How I've
him.
missed him so much. Even though he's in it for like 4 sentences, I don't care.
I know. We love him despite him being Venom, and so does Violet. And she is very relieved to see that he is okay with no sign of injury. And her thought that I really liked is he may technically be an initiate, but he's nothing like the Venom we just fought. Gods, I love this man. Zayden looks at her and then says, "Tell me something, Violence. Why is it always you?"
If that ain't the $1,000,000 question, why is it always Violet? Always. She's like a magnet for them.
Because they want her so badly. They're always
Well,
chasing her.
true.
They're like drawn to her.
I know, we just talked about that for like 30 minutes.
Yeah. Anyways, so this, guys, is exactly how we ended up with like 12 pages of notes from this 3-page excerpt.
And believe it or not, we cut things out.
But yeah, anyways, so we're done discussing that. That concludes our analysis of this excerpt. We are so excited for Onyx Storm to come out, obviously.
I'm literally
and now you guys know
shaking with anticipation
how excited we are, because this deep dive, just a little snack of what we will probably do when we actually do read Onyx Storm.
I did not know how bad I wanted to deep dive into Onyx Storm until we started doing this, because even though we do TOG, it's just totally a different world, a different universe, right? And I was sucked in immediately. Like, I was just immersed immediately. And so I am just delighted to be back in this universe. And I am just really excited. I can't wait for January, as I'm sure we all can't. So
anyways, so we did have some favorite moments and quotes that we wanted to share before we end the episode. So go ahead, Addison, start us off.
Well, the obvious one is Zaddy's home. Zaddy's home. I mean, hello. I mean, you know, but I did like when in the beginning of the excerpt, when they leave Sawyer in the infirmary and he says, "Guess I'll just stay here," which is so funny because obviously he ain't going anywhere because he just lost his leg. So I can just picture him like, "Okay, guys, I'll wait here. I'll protect the infirmary. You guys go." Like, okay, Sawyer.
Don't mind me. I know.
I love Sawyer so much. Him and Jasenia make my heart so happy.
I'm really glad that he survived. Obviously, it was not great that he got his leg cut off, but it could have been a lot worse. Okay, so he could have died.
Oh, no, listen. They made a promise and a commitment to each other that their squad stays alive, all 4 of them. So if any of them die, Rebecca Yarros and I are going to have words, okay? Because there was a commitment made on the page to each other and to me as a reader. So none of them better die. Riddick, Rhiannon, and Sawyer, Violet.
Nobody dying. That was one of my favorite lines, is when Violet tells them, "None of us died today."
Oh,
and that rings true. That has, like you said, been a commitment amongst their squad since the very beginning.
Yeah, I love that. I also loved when they're first going to search for the Venom, freaking Indarna. And Darna with the adolescent one-liner, she says, "Bring their bodies outside once you're done killing them so we can roast them for fun." Like, Indarna, she's bloodthirsty. She's vicious.
I know, but I love her though.
I know.
She's hilarious. I miss her. I really do. In that same scene when they're fighting against them, I really liked when Violet flicks her dagger at the Venom in the hall and Rhys says, "Damn, sometimes I forget how good you are at that."
And then I don't know why, but all through Fourth Wing Iron Flame, I have always loved when Zayden uses his shadows to show affection to Violet. Like in this excerpt when he gently brushes her cheek. I love those. They make me so happy.
Oh, and yeah, speaking of that as well, I had a quote that I liked, and it says, "A band of darkness wraps around my hips and yanks me backward, then brushes my cheek gently, steadying my galloping heartbeat and quieting my power."
Ah, the Zaddy effect. The Zayden effect. I love it. Yes. And then last but not least for me, you guys will probably be able to tell as we continue our Onyx Storm coverage, but I get feral anytime he calls her Violence in that sultry way. Like, not when she's in danger and he's like, "Violence," you know, but when he's like, "Violence," I love that. You know what? As I'm saying it, on second thought, basically everything Zayden does makes me absolutely feral. So I just love Zayden Ryerson. I love him. Try not to say that every episode over and over again. You guys just know, okay?
Oh, you're going to say it every episode.
I know. I really am. I said it in the very first episode of this podcast in our introduction. I said it there. So you know my love has been pure and true from the very beginning.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, just know Addison's going to say it every time. We have accepted the truth.
Okay.
Yay.
Thank you. Surely I'm not alone.
No, of course not. So anyways, that now concludes our little bonus episode about this Onyx Storm excerpt. So thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Booked on Fantasy podcast. As always, we are so glad you found us. So please leave us a review, subscribe to the podcast, and check out our social media pages to keep up with us on a daily basis. That's all we've got for you guys this episode. So stay nerdy and stay tuned for our very first episode of Queen of Shadows as well. Bye.
Bye. And stay tuned for many, many bloopers. 1,000 pages. And we still have Empire Storms, right? No.
Storms. Yeah.
Yeah,
Empire
we still
Storms, Tower of Dawn. Oh, no. Queen of Shadows, Empire Storms. Oh, wait. No, we're going to finish. Hold on.
Yeah, we'll finish Queen of Shadows. Yes. Yeah. I know the same thing. We still have Empire Storms, Town of Dawn. Oh my gosh, I can't say it. So we're just going to do kind of a brief recap. I don't know what I was trying to say. Overview, recap, whatever. We're just going to do a brief recap. Oh my God. Okay. Well, all this is going down. Venom was getting his ass whooped. I think it was Zayden. Whoops. That's not right. Also, it is important to know that Violet's squad remained in attack. Oh my gosh. See, this is what happens when you do it like hours before.
On alert.
I was like typing like a psycho. Okay.
Why? Why are you doing this to me right now? Stupid. Okay.
Stupid.
Did I already say this part? I feel like I already talked about this. Oh, we talked about this part earlier.
Oh, we did? Oh, whoops. Hold on one second. My children are knocking at the door.
What the fuck makes you so special?
Say that again. The word fuck came out of your mouth kind of weird.
Oh.
It came out like fuck, which I will say for the bloopers. But...
Okay. Okay, so he says...
I'll mute myself.